Hello, welcome everyone. We're just waiting 1 more minute for everyone to connect, so we will start the webinar. Okay, let's start. So again, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining our webinar. So today's session is designed to be interactive and conversational. So please send us your questions at any time during this conversation using the Q&A button or the chat. We did reserve a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the live to address all of your questions. So I'm joined here today by Carl from Lyngsoe Systems and Mika from Beontag, and together we'll explore how smart tracking can help you manage RTIs more effectively during peak season. So thank you so much, Carl and Mika, for joining us today. So the stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Alice. Welcome, webinar participants. Thanks for joining us. Peak season is when supply chains are truly put to the test. So as you all know, volumes increase, the margins tighten, and even small inefficiencies become very visible. So today we'll focus on one of the most underestimated constraints in logistics operations, which are the returnable transport items, also known as RTIs. Examples of these are pallets, roll cages, totes, and also reusable containers. There's a lot of classes here. I just mentioned 4 or 5, probably the highest volume ones. What our research tells us is that there are estimated around 310 million of these returnable transport items in the US alone. And they're particularly used within automotive, food, and beverage sectors, as well as in warehousing. So over 41% of all auto and retail supply chains already deploy RTIs. And this is driving 23% savings because they replace the disposables. Disposables over time, single use, are not environmentally great either. And again, they are expensive over time. So there's a clear economic benefit of using the returnable transport item. We also have data, conservatively speaking, that 10 to 15% of these units are lost yearly. And the assets range between $50 and $1,500 or $50 and $1,500. So consequently, their management is critical.
Yeah, thank you, Carl and Alice, for kicking us off, and welcome also on my behalf. Those were indeed some quite significant numbers that you mentioned there, Carl. And if you look around, RTIs, they are everywhere nowadays. Like you said, smaller plastic boxes, bigger metallic roll cages, and everything in between. And they have really become like I would say, an essential part of the daily operations. I've been working in RFID now about 20 years. And although there has been a lot of improvements on RTI traceability, I still see that there's a lot of organizations that remain like largely unmanaged. And when you get to the peak seasons, say Black Friday, holidays, promotional spikes, that lack of control, it becomes a real operational risk. And this can then, of course, lead into the excess capital tied up to assets, reactive redistribution, bottlenecks on the shop floor, and at the end of the day, avoidable replacement spend.
Exactly, Mika. And that's why today's session is intentionally conversational. We'll share what we've been seeing and experiencing globally and how companies are using technologies like RFID, radio frequency identification, and also BLE, which is Bluetooth Low Energy, and what it actually works and how it works when demand peaks. So here's the first poll, Alice, correct?
Yes, this is the first poll, so everyone please join and participate. So our first question for you is, what is the biggest challenge you face when managing RTIs? Um, are they related to RTI location, RTI losses, management during peak season, maybe damages, dwell time, manual processes or manpower, pull and balance, or any other reasons? So please vote in the poll.
Excellent. And do we have a winner here in terms of the categories listed?
Yes, we do. So far, RTI location is the main pain point for most of our audience here, followed by RTI management during peak season. And on the third position is dwell time.
Excellent. Excellent, excellent. Yeah, I mean, we should reflect on that a little bit. RTI location clearly within a closed loop can be a number of things, but not having the visibility, not knowing what you have on hand is a significant pain point. We see that in a number of the deployments that we've done. But anyway, let's move on beyond this first poll, and let's start maybe also with a reality that most supply chain leaders recognize, which is this RTI that's circulating in this closed loop between plants, warehouses, transport hubs, and customer sites, as well as supplier storage and warehouses, often without a single source of truth or a proper location context, going back to this RTI location issue. So in day-to-day operations, this is already creating a lot of friction, but during the peak seasons, these inefficiencies scale very fast.
Yeah, indeed. And from technology perspective, what is actually a bit of surprising, I would say, is how little discipline is applied to these RTIs compared to the finished goods or inventory of the goods today. And like you mentioned earlier, RTI loss rates of up to 15% per year, they are common. And this isn't just an operational issue. When an RTI is lost, money is lost basically, and in a worst case, you lose also something much more valuable along with the RTI, something that you're supposed to deliver to a customer, say. And there are studies that in US alone, these lost RTIs that adds up to around $1 billion per year in replacement costs.
Yeah, and the loss in itself is only one part of the story. Mika already referenced it, but it's also these major imbalances where you have excess RTIs piling up in a low throughput location where they don't need them. And then in the high volume sites, they're running empty, which creates massive inefficiencies and pockets of excess working capital that's stuck, right? Also known as just in case inventory. And the production delays that this can generate could also cause serious penalties, mandates, and also service level agreements that you are missing, and then emergency situations where you have to scramble, which is also extremely costly, augmented during the peak.
Yeah, this of course it triggers, like you said, emergency procurement, manual searches, expedited transport, and all of this during the time of the year, which is already the most stressful time and full of fires to be shut down, even without these these issues that you could get from lost RTIs.
Thank you, Mika. And I could not agree with you more, right? Manual processes simply don't scale. Barcodes, they're good. Spreadsheets, okay, right? Paper-based reconciliation, not ideal. And these things collapse during the peak volume season. So again, we've said it several times, the automation of this is key. So anyway, from the two of us here to the audience, our key message is that peak season amplify RTI loss, imbalance, dwell time, and operational downtime.
Perfect. And we have our second poll today. So please answer us. How are you currently tracking your RTIs? Are you using RFID, BLE technology, both RFID and BLE? Are you doing it manually? Are you not tracking at all? Or do you have any other tool you're using? So far we see the majority of you are using RFID, followed closely by manually tracking or not tracking actually.
Sounds like you have come to a right webinar in that case, if you're struggling with the manual tracking or not even tracking at all. Thank you, Alice. And from here, I think where we get into a point where the mindset shift actually happens. RFID or BLE enabled RTI management. It transforms RTIs from just a reusable packaging into something intelligent, trackable infrastructure, I would say. And personally, I like to phrase this in a way that we are actually turning physical operations into digital intelligence. We are capturing what happens in real world and then converting that into some sort of data that you can then base your decisions on. And to do this, you need basically two key information of the RTI: identification and location information.
Yeah, that's right, Mika. So again, identification in the context of RFID is that every RTI gets its unique digital identity or a license plate of sorts. It's linked to ownership, history, as well as usage. And then the locational element allows us to know where it is and when it moves across a network. And what the good news is that there are a couple of technologies that we will talk to next, BLE as well as RFID, and that's where they come in. So it's important, before Mika explains a little bit more about them, that it's clear that these two are complementary. They don't compete, and they're designed really for different use cases.
Exactly, Carl. Complementary, not competing. And here we have a simple table describing some of the high-level differences of these technologies. And a quick clarification at the beginning. When we talk about RFID, we talk about UHF RFID, goes also by the name RAIN RFID. And there are, of course, other RFID technologies like NFC, but those are then suitable for other use cases than RTI tracking. RFID, it's ideal for, let's say, high speed, high volume environments. This can be, for example, warehouses or item level logistics. Use cases where you want to read hundreds of tags at a time in a second. Battery free, very cost effective at scale. There are handheld readers, of course, and use cases for those, but quite often when we talk about environment involving RTIs, containers, RFID is often used on a fixed locations, like gates, doors, conveyor belts, and so on. BLE then, on the other hand, it enables continuous visibility over larger areas, and specifically for applications where fixed infrastructure is a bit limited or hard to implement without high costs. Can be large distribution centers, construction yards, some sort of an outdoor environment, and different kind of mobile setups where basically the fixed infra is just a no-go. It's not possible to set up fixed infra on environment like that. BLE devices, they are generally battery powered, and can, in addition to the unique ID, you can also broadcast the sensor data like a temperature or vibration. How would you then read this BLE data? There are these fixed gateways, a bit like in the RFID world, but you can also use your mobile phone. So this means basically that every employee, they carry a reader device in a pocket that can scan these tags within 100 meters, 300 feet of a range. And then, of course, you can combine these two technologies, RFID for mass identification, and then BLE for extended coverage and more real-time location information, if that is what you're looking for.
Excellent. Yeah, and from a systems perspective, of course, you have these unique identifiers in different locations, etc. But from a systems perspective, this creates the opportunity to create a layered visibility model. Choke or checkpoint-based visibility. So you have a location that you continuously are monitoring. And it also allows you to clearly understand when the tracking has stopped or when an asset has last been seen. The RTI was last seen in a certain location, which really reduces the amount of time you have to spend looking for it. So anyway, concluding here, RFID and BLE together form the backbone of real-time RTI visibility. This technology is nascent. Actually, it was built for asset tracking, and we are converting this to a very useful use case in the RTI.
Indeed. And one thing I want to highlight here is that picking the right technology, it's part of the journey, but it alone isn't enough. So during these peak seasons, the tag performance and durability, that also becomes critical. You need a system that delivers reliable data that you can trust on. And if I think what makes RTI tracking work at scale, I'd like to raise some best practices we have learned along the years. Like there are both metallic and plastic RTIs, metallic containers, plastic boxes. First, it's very important to identify what material you have, as you need to pick a tag that is designed for that. Metallic containers, they require on-metal tags. And picking the wrong tag in the first place, it may result very wrong conclusions on how the system actually performs or what is possible to achieve with the tracking solution. So that's one. Then we have a tag placement, a place that avoids direct impacts, and also a place that would ensure good reading. That you don't put a tag behind some metallic structure, for example, because that would block the signal and cause issues for the system. Then actually quite many of our RTI customers, they place two tags on larger RTIs, especially with the metallic ones, because you don't always know what is the orientation of the container when it goes through the gate. And so with this kind of a dual tagging, you can improve the reliability, the robustness of the reading. And then I think the last thing I want to highlight is the validation against washing cycles. Although we do have some washing guidance on our data sheets, some values, numbers there, but there's as many washing processes as there are customers. And for this reason, we always recommend testing washing at the real environment.
Yeah, the tag selection is critical. And another critical piece is to make RTI tracking work the data usability. So you have the data that's come in, right? If you're reading it, so the real-time RTI data only creates value if it's actionable and integrated into a system. So that's why Lyngsoe Live, which is the Lyngsoe Systems platform, connects RTI visibility directly into ERP systems, warehouse management systems, or transport management systems, so ERP, WMS, and TMS systems. This enables full asset count visibility, real-time location transparency. It also allows for faster asset turns, lower dwell time, predictive loss prevention, and the balancing of the RTI pools, which of course ensures better results during the peak season planning. So our key message here in this section is that RTI visibility must be enterprise grade, real-time, and system integrated, and we can help you with this. All right. KPIs, one of my favorite areas. So before we look into a real example, let's elevate the discussion a little bit. Visibility alone is not the objective. So what matters really a lot to key decision makers, CEOs, and the C-suite is performance, capital efficiency, and resilience.
Yeah, indeed. And we have seen most of the, let's say, mature RTI programs, they actually focus on this small set of critical KPIs that we see here.
Correct. And you'll see them listed on this slide. But first of all, we have shrink rate. So RTI loss is capital erosion. We mentioned that a couple of times. Even a small improvement releases significant value. So just an example, if you're managing a pool of 500,000 RTIs at an average cost of $50 per piece, which is fairly low, I would say, you own and manage a 25 million asset category. That's a lot of money. And if 10% of these goes missing, do the math, right? That's around, I don't know, $5 million $2.5 million. So say you can reduce that or half that rate of missing assets or RTIs, then you save the company, just doing some simple math here, $1.25 million on an annualized basis. So the shrinkage rate, super important.
Yeah, it's quite easy to get the ROI with those numbers. Second, we have the asset turn rate. Obviously, the higher turns, it means less capital tied up and more flexibility during the demand peaks.
Correct. Thirdly, here, the dwell time. So idle assets are also these hidden constraints that we speak of, especially dangerous during peak seasons, right? Warehouse operators sometimes accumulate tens of thousands of these RTIs just in case, while other parts of the closed loop are left in a shortage situation. We mentioned that before. So managing this dwell time is key, or a key KPI for the system to work. Again, savings for the organization.
Indeed, and then we have the pool balance, and what we mean by this is that your assets are where they need to be next, not where they last ended up.
Correct. One of my favorites here on this list is the intervention frequency. So mature RTI environments are data-driven, not driven by crisis. So intervention should be an exception and not the rule. Forecasting and predicting instead of scrambling and firefighting. An operations team should not be having to deal with these problems, especially during the peak season. All right, so we move on to the Posti as well as the Posti case. So let's make it tangible. Posti is Finland's national postal and logistics provider. They manage over 100,000 reusable transport items across the country. Despite high automation, which they've had for years and decades, they lacked real-time RTI visibility, which resulted in significant annual replacement costs of RTIs, obviously, manual time-consuming inventory routines, labor drag, that is, inefficient relocations across Finland, this movement of RTIs to satisfy situations in the last minute, and then difficulty matching asset supply with regional demand. Very important for Finland as well. It increased CO2 emissions, which are being regulated very closely due to this unnecessary transport.
That is a lot of challenges to be solved there, but I like this use case, and not only because I'm personally located in Finland, but because these challenges that you mentioned, they are exactly what we can address with the BLE-based tracking solution over the entire RTI pool.
Yeah, and the results were very clear. Obtaining real-time visibility, high tracking accuracy, efficient data captured across the different wide geographies of the country, a unified IoT-driven technology stack with the Lyngsoe Live logistics, and all leading to transparent collaboration.
Yeah, I think we can say that at the end of the day, they were able to turn those physical operations into digital intelligence, like what I mentioned earlier. Instead of just using a hunch, they can now use reliable data for the business critical decisions. And I think as a key takeaway of this Posti case, I would take that RTI tracking programs, they are proved to be delivering measurable ROI and resilience against the peak season rush. So there were answers in the first poll that classification during the peak season is an issue. So here is one example how one company has solved this issue.
Excellent, Mika. Yeah, we're close to the end of the presentation, and before we get into the Q&A, but the key strategic priorities, right? These are the ones that we see consistently among successful organizations.
Yeah, first, you really need to elevate RTIs to core operational assets. The issues with RTIs, they are rarely logistics problems. They are visibility problems.
Yeah, and second, it's about digitizing the RTI lifecycle. So you tag something using the Beontag identifiers or license plate, and then you track it with the reader systems that we help integrate. Then you go into analyzing the clean data. Finally, you optimize by reallocating resources, focus on your biggest pain points, etc. This visibility that you get is well, you'll speak to it next, Mika.
Yeah, I think the third, create shared visibility across the value chain. The real value of tracking these RTIs is unlocked only when you share the visibility with everyone throughout the whole supply chain. Everyone throughout the chain, they can benefit of having this tracking information available.
Yeah, and then getting into how this is then deployed and how this success or the success is achieved. It's a phased approach, typically starting with an assessment of the environment and the challenge. The second phase, or we call it phase one, is to conduct a pilot to measure the improvements gained by the technology, setting some KPIs that we then measure ourselves against. The second phase, or phase two, is a rollout or production grade technology deployment. We're talking about integration into various systems as well as putting things in production, right? And then you scale, optimize, you tweak and tune the system for maximum performance. So this is where jointly Beontag and Lyngsoe Systems can approach and support you in your challenges.
Yeah, and I think, Carl, the goal here is simple: to make every RTI count, not just during the peak seasons, but also every day in between. And Alice, I think with this we can jump into our Q&A session.
Fantastic. Okay, so going to the Q&A section, let's answer some of your questions here with our specialists. So the first one is for Carl. We experience issues with RTIs that have been in use for more cycles than they're built for. So the state and health of these RTIs is anybody's guess, and we rely on quarterly visual inspections. What can we do to avoid RTIs breaking apart during transport or outside of our facilities?
Wow. Yeah, this is a tricky and a critical one. When the RTI is anonymized, doesn't have an ID, and only gets inspected occasionally, there's no real visibility in the duty cycle or its history. Nobody really knows when it gets commissioned or when it was last cleaned, repair. Inspection might be visual, as you say here. So without the data, assets are operating blind, which increases the risk of failure. And we have some experience, or clients that have experienced that, totes that are carrying mission critical tools or medicines that break apart during transit. So the operational safety and financial consequences are dreadful. Horrible. So with the software, the Lyngsoe Live software, tags from Beontag, giving these, let's call them anonymous assets, a license plate, an identity, really gains a lot of importance, right? You have a digital history, and you can check maintenance rules, you can set alerts for usage thresholds, and finally, you can also set in some service scheduling, right? So that's what our software does, preventing, of course, these devastating disruptions, particularly during peak.
Great, thank you, Carl. We have an interesting one here. So this one is for Mika. In addition to the identifier itself, so the static tag, have you seen other dynamic data to be stored in the tag itself?
Usually we don't recommend adding excessive amount of data into the tag itself. So we propose the way of operating that you have the ID in a tag, and then you have whatever other data you want, it's in your backend. So like all the, let's say, maintenance history of the RTI, you would find that from your backend, not from the tag itself. Some customers, they would like to have everything in a tag, which means that you need a lot of memory to store that, but it's very rarely really needed there. So you also have a, let's say, much broader tag selection available if you just go with an ID and you don't try to put all the data into the tag memory. So just put the ID in a tag. That's the unique ID of the RTI. It will remain the same throughout the lifetime of the RTI. And then you have all the additional data that can change during the lifetime in your software side, in your backend.
Right. Encoding.
Great. So talking still about tags, Mika, how do I know which format we should use considering labels or hard tags?
That's another good, might sound simple question, but it's actually one of the critical tag selection criteria. There are different type of tags. There are like label type of tags that you can print and encode with RFID printer on site, and you just attach them on an RTI. And then you have a robust encapsulated tags that can take all kind of impacts. You can drive over those and they will be fine. And both of these are available for either metallic or plastic RTIs. And I would say the critical question here is that how mechanically demanding the application is. If the containers are hit to each other during the lifetime, then or carried with the, let's say, forklifts, hard tag would probably be a better choice. It can take the damage that the container itself would take. But then if the containers are handled more gently, can be even like a gas cylinders or something that you are not supposed to throw, that are not supposed to get impacts, then maybe the label could do the job. And in our portfolio, we have roughly 80 products if you go to our website. And there's a reason for this. There's no tag that would work for everything. That would make my product management life a bit easier, but there's no such a tag. But I'm happy to help you picking the right tag if you drop me an email after the webinar.
Great. We have one question here for Carl. Does Lyngsoe platform rely on standards as it collects and shared red events? And if yes, which ones?
Yeah, a technical question here, but we do work with the different warehouse management systems. I mentioned already enterprise resource planning systems, as well as the transport management systems. When it comes to standards, we work with the RFID community that also puts out standards through the RAIN initiative. AIM as well, ISO standards. We have a team that specializes, or a couple of people that specialize in also us being able to work within a standards-based community and framework. We don't do unique RFID tags for a specific client. We use the ones that are already off the shelf in a standardization framework. And the good news from my perspective is that RFID is no longer a brand new technology where everything is a little bit like the Wild West, and there are different standards that are popping up and competitions between different technologies. For the most part, RFID passive is well defined, and it's been around for 20 years. No science experiment here. So to answer the question, yes, we operate with the standards, and if there's a specific standard that you want to hear about, please drop an email separately, and I'll be more than happy to take that to our team.
Thank you, Carl. This one, I think it's for both of you, Carl and Mika. How would you use RFID in a large retail environment where not every store has the right infrastructure to handle RFID? Or would you go for another solution rather than RFID in this case?
Yeah, well, maybe
you start, Mika.
Here first. Would be important to understand a bit more of a context that what kind of assets we talk about RTIs. So I assume we are tracking RTIs here. We have customers that have, for example, 5,000 locations where they handle RTIs, and not every single location has RFID equipped. And they don't need to, because they handle one RTI a day or something like that. So they don't want to invest into infrastructure. They're good with the barcode still. So what we can do, we can combine technologies. We can have a barcode on a BLE, on an RFID, to give those sites that don't use big quantity of the RTIs. We give them flexibility to use some old-fashioned technology instead of implementing into this. But this is another good question that maybe we could dive deeper even after the webinar to look what kind of environment you have.
Agreed. And it is, it's commonly used, the crawl, walk, run model. So the very basic technology that's being used for RTI tracking today is a barcode scan, right? So you look at a barcode, and of course you can get a good read of the items that are in your possession. Assuming we're talking about RTIs, the next step is probably, if you want to graduate from that, is to have RFID reading, right? So by using the RFID reader, you can make it more efficient with a handheld. I guess would be phase number one. You can locate things with a handheld, wanding an area. You can get a decent inventory count as well. It's hard to track things, however, in the closed loop. You don't always know when it has left your facility, etc. So if you're looking for outside your own facility, that's where the fixed systems are recommended. You would have something at a dock door or at another choke point where it's going from one area to the next, so you can also know where it's going from a location perspective. So, but again, I agree with Mika. Every single customer may have a slightly different nuance and application area. So retailers receive a lot of RTIs as well, compared to maybe manufacturers. Manufacturers are typically the ones stuck with the RTI challenge. They have normally these RTIs to send to a supplier to fill up with contents, could be different sort of components, but equally the retailer sometimes is the recipient of, let's say, a bread loaf tray from a bakery, right? And then the bakery doesn't really know where this tray went. So anyway, the retailer is typically the recipient, but they also use in their warehousing some RTIs, depending again on your specific sub-vertical or element of retail. More than happy to have a deeper conversation.
Awesome. So we have one final question here. This one is for you as well, Carl. How do I manage compliance with my suppliers/customers? Our operations frequently lose track of where RTIs are, and we have tight contracts with them, but have no way of charging or reinforcing compliance metrics, writing off thousands of dollars every year.
Yeah, I think this is connected to what I mentioned just a minute ago, that many times it's a manufacturer that owns an RTI or has an RTI pool that's managed by an RTI management company. There's many ways that companies either insource this or outsource it to third parties. But the system that we build, particularly the ones that are leveraging Beontag and these hybrid BLE tags that we spoke about, allow us to trace the RTIs automatically without human involvement if we have these fixed reader systems, right? So you will know, and you'll have a scan and a notification that's automated of the last seen point of this item or asset, the RTI. So the Lyngsoe software associates the particular RTI with a client or supplier on the receiving end. So they'll get a notice of the license plate having been delivered, right? The digital identity. So that helps in a massive way because it's automated, number one. And number two, it gives you an audit trail. So yeah, I mean, you can clearly start looking at patterns at certain customer sites where there's more leakage than others. And that's a very good way and a tailored approach to enforcing the root cause issue, right? So you would typically work with the 80-20 rule and go for the ones that are the problem compliance issues. But you can only do this once you start measuring it, right? That's the old adage. If you don't measure something, you can't improve it. And again, every case is different, but the good news is that our team has a lot of experience in this and happy to partner with you in your design strategies so you can recuperate your RTIs. I'm more than happy to have the conversation with you separately as well.
Thank you, Carl. So we reached the end of our webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. Please do contact us if you'd like to explore which ways to see how our joint approach with RFID and BLE for RTI or asset tracking can benefit your organization. We have deployed thousands of RTIs and asset tracking with companies and in different conditions. So we are happy to develop a solution that fits your environment with a budget as you scale. Again, thank you so much for joining. Also, Lyngsoe and Beontag will be at Modex event, the upcoming event here. So please pay us a visit our booths. Our team will be there and they will be happy to talk to you. Again, thank you so much for joining and we'll see you in the next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.